What is going on, guys? Winter Kills here, and welcome back to another post-commentary duel video. You guys already know what's going on. This is a post-Dark Neostorm matchup. Both decks here, Orcust and Burning Abyss, post-Dark Neostorm. BA getting Cherubini, and Orcust getting the rank 8 Exceeds monster, Orcust and Girsu, and the searchable counter trap Orchestrated Climax, of course, following the new ban list. Grepher at 1, Armageddon Knight at 1, and playing Scrap Recycler instead. So this is a pretty interesting matchup of the future. So we'll go ahead and get into it real quick. But first, you guys know we're sponsored by Imperium Duelist. Check out Imperium Duelist. I recommend picking up some of their effect sleeves or non-effect sleeves. Absolutely incredible. Or one of their playmats, like this beautiful Millennium playmat we're using here. You can find out more on their website down in the description below. Use that code to save 10% off. Help support me in the process. So now we'll go ahead and get into the video here. I start the turn with Allure of Darkness, which is a card I don't think I will end up playing in the future, mainly because too many times I've drawn into Allure, and you know, the 2 draws is nice, but I end up wanting to banish anything off of it, and it just feels weird to play sometimes. So I think I might cut it going forward, because the deck, just in my opinion, might not even need it to begin with, because you already have a draw spell in the deck, and just playing more monsters instead of Allure, I think, is the way to go. Possibly more danger monsters. So going into Summon Sorceress here, using Symbol Skeleton to summon out the Galatea, who I used earlier to grab that field spell from deck, and now using Summon Sorceress to summon another machine from deck, going to summon the World Legacy World Wand, which basically, when that's in the grave, you can banish it to summon one of your banished Orcust monsters, which is super helpful in this deck. Now, as is, I could go into the classic Bomber Dragon Longirsu play, which is a pretty solid field to end on. I could just do it right now by linking the Galatea and the World Wand into Longirsu, where the Galatea currently is. Then using the World Wand to summon Symbol Skeleton to be able to link Summon Sorceress and the Symbol Skeleton into Bomber Dragon. But now I wanted to try and incorporate in some way, shape, or form the new Orcust, the Orcust and Girsu into this play. So I do that. And on summon, it has either one of 2 effects you can use to attach a material that is banished to it. One of your banished cards, I believe that is. You know, you can target it and attach it to it, or you can send a card your opponent controls to the graveyard. Just send it to the graveyard, and it gets around destruction, protections, and things of that nature, so it's very solid. So I decided to link that away and go into another Galatea, which is pretty nice. It would be nice to have the Longirsu here as well if I had like one more card to get on the field with. But now I have the option to wipe his field at least twice this turn, send a card to the graveyard, and search another Orcust spell or trap via Galatea, all during this turn. And I've already got 2 set cards going into this, so feeling pretty strong, as usual, about Orcust's first turn plays. Now, I am playing a Danger Engine here instead of the Phantom Knight Engine, because in my personal playstyle, I prefer it a bit more. Starting his turn with Gallus the Star Beast, milling a Dark Arm Dragon. That'll drop me down by 1400, summoning the latest and greatest Psychic Tracker to the field, which, if I would let him, could go right into a Cherubini to get things started. Now, I use Heart Pour on the summon of Tracker. Goes to Chain Called By to target the Heart Pour, which he technically cannot do. Which he was unaware of, because they all do banish for cost. I don't believe he knew that. But the fact that they simply banish for cost is really powerful. So I use Harpour, summon out the Orcust Nightmare, and now on the summon of Orcust Nightmare, a couple things are going to happen. Bomber Dragon's going to go off. I'm going to chain Galatea, set Orcust Strated Climax, the searchable counter trap, from deck to my field, and his whole field is going to go. I get a search. And now I have an Orcust Nightmare engraved for next turn, with 3 set cards now. And I believe the rest of his hand, having to deal with that, isn't the greatest. I still believe I have a Symbol Skeleton engraved too, so I can either do one of 2 things, which is to use the Symbol Skeleton to summon to a zone that Bomber Dragon points to blow up his field again, or I could Symbol Skeleton summon out the Dingirsu and send a card he controls to the graveyard. So I've got a couple options here to stop more plays. He goes and decides that maybe he wants to summon the Edgem Sabers, but instead going for the Libic. And I believe there's no other cards left in his hand. We know basically the rest of the cards in hand at this point is Called By and Edgem Sabers. So there's really not a whole lot he can do with the cards that he has left. So, and I believe a Phantom Knight there. So not going to do a whole lot, and we're just going to go right into game 2. Orcust putting up one of its usual first turn control boards. Now, I know BA right now can be played mainly as a going second build, be able to go into cards like Boral Sword pretty fast, and mainly just swarm the field in OTK. But with Cherubini being a new card, and all this new Psychic stuff, and the Phantom Knight stuff still being as good as it is, I feel like the deck can sort of have a return to form, and go back to playing more of a Dante Turbo style. Which isn't nearly as good as it used to be, because of course we still only have one Seer and Graph. But again, I think the deck can sort of go back to a return to form and play a much more hardy going first deck with traps like Fire Lake and Fog Blade to give your opponent a hard time. And I've already been testing Fire Lake with this deck, since you can always end very easy with like Cherubini and Double Dante, and seeing a Fire Lake on top of like a Fog Blade can almost just be game over to begin with. So we use the Cherubini to send Graph to summon Seer. And then used Dante effect here, and I believe he also ended up using the effect of Cherubini to send an additional card to the grave, which I believe was Graph. I might have just mixed that up, but oh well. So yeah, Milling Fiendish Rhino Warrior, Wielder, Psychic Wielder that is, and Phantom Knights of the Boots. So using the Rhino Warrior here to send Libic, Burning Abyss, Libic to the grave, and using Libic's effect now to summon a level 3 Dark Fiend from your hand, but its effects are negated. And I believe, actually no wait, I think he's actually going to send Calcab to the grave via Rhino Warrior, just to deck thin, I believe, because I don't think he maybe had another Fiend in hand to extend with. I think that's probably what it was. Instead, going into just as good as an option here, going into the Rusty Bardiche to set a Fog Blade by sending a Phantom Knight. So going to send the Ragged Gloves, and then using Cloak or Boots effect to search a Phantom Knight spell or trap to go right into another Fog Blade. So it has double Fog Blade. And I believe, I believe that one of the main reasons he didn't send Libic was probably because he wanted to have a Beatrice play here in the end, only having one other Burning Abyss in hand here to be able to summon off a Libic potentially. And if he would have done the Libic play, he wouldn't have had the BA in hand, which I believe is Alec. So I think that's why he just opted to send the Calcab, just to deck thin a little bit. Calcab not being the most important Burning Abyss. So just getting that out of the deck to, like I said, deck then, not too big of a deal. Using Ragged Gloves to foolish a Fog Blade to the grave, which will help out later. Having Fog Blades in grave is always nice later to revive cards like Bardiche and Breaksword. And they're in the end phase, like not in the end phase, but like I said, going into the Beatrice by sending the Alec to the grave. I get started with basically the Pot of Greed for the deck, sending an Orcust or World Legacy card from your hand or field to the graveyard to draw 2 cards. It is a hard once per turn, but it is still a pretty good card to be able to get your Orcust or World Legacies into the grave. I think it's just a better alternative for Allure of Darkness at the end of the day. I'm only playing 2 copies of it right now since it is a hard once per turn. So Scrap Recycler comes down, hoping to get a really solid play started, but the fact that Scrap Recycler gets negated does slow me down quite a bit. Then I use the Brass Bombard to summon Harp Horror from hand to go right into Galatea. Now, main reason you always go into Galatea first, obviously because it's a Link 2. You can also use it at the start of your plays to go ahead and set an Orcust spell or trap, which in this case, I really want to get to the field spell, because in my opinion, the field spell is one of the best cards for the deck. Mainly the linchpin, I would go as far to say, because it is what allows you to interrupt your opponent so much during their turn, because it makes all of your Orcust effects quick effects. So you can use the cards like the Link Monsters effects during your opponent's turn, the monsters in your graveyard during your opponent's turn, and the new counter trap in your graveyard during your opponent's turn, so you aren't hindered by its restriction to summon only machine monsters. So of course Beatrice is going to send Farfa, and Farfa is going to attempt to target Libic, or not Libic, Galatea, and of course I do have a Call by the Grave for the Farfa, attempting to activate the effect of Galatea again to return Brass Bombard to grab a orchestrated spell or trap, and that's going to get negated by the other Fogblade. Of course, Dante adding back a card, one being detached. I believe he added back Seer, and summoning out the Orcust Nightmare now from the Harpor. And I believe both these Fogblades should be in the graveyard now, since the cards they were targeting have been sent to the graveyard. So we'll see those both get sent to the graveyard momentarily. That Fogblade in the middle should be gone, because that is what targeted Scrap Recycler at the start of the turn. Now I go into Long Gearsu, and Long Gearsu is a pretty good card to go into right now, because it does have the ability to send a card it points to that is linked to the graveyard by recycling 2 of your banished Dark Machines. So I will just send the Beatrice to the grave. It's not being destroyed, so it will not get its effect, which is really nice, because my Dante Pilgrim still hasn't come in the mail yet, and don't have a proxy made up for it. So I'll resolve an Allure of Darkness now, which does help out a little bit. I have to banish a Harpor off that. It's not too big of a deal, though. And I use a Mothman here to be able to get, luckily, a Symbol Skeleton to the grave. And I place the Mothman in that position there to a zone where Long Gearsu is pointing to it, mainly because it can now not be destroyed by card effects, which is really, really important because it is linked. And since I did use the Long Gearsu effect to send Beatrice to the grave, Long Gearsu cannot attack now. So I cannot get over the Rusty Bardiche, and I have to leave that on his field, unfortunately. Now, I know the Danger Engine is pretty expensive, but you guys know I like to keep it budget most of the time. So you don't have to play cards like Tsuchinoko and Nessie in Orcust. Orcust is one of those decks where you can probably play the most budget dangers there are and be okay, mainly because you don't really care about the effects of the dangers too much. The fact that they all share the, if they get special summon, you get to draw effect is great, but the main effect you care about is the fact that your opponent does have the ability and the chance to discard some of your Orcust cards to the graveyard, which is probably the most important thing. So if you're looking for budget alternatives, I recommend Dogman, Mothman, and I guess you could even play Thunderbird as well, because Thunderbird is pretty cheap. I think it's one of the more cheaper secret rare danger monsters, which I might even pick up a playset as well, because in my build for the TCG version, I'm currently playing 3 Jackalope, 3 Mothman, and 2 Dogman, because I was able to pick up Jackalope before it went up in price a little bit. I believe a playset of Jackalopes only cost me about 30 bucks a couple weeks ago. So obviously I realize that's not the case anymore, so if you're looking for another budget alternative, Danger Thunderbird works just as fine, because that back row effect is pretty nice when going second. So end phase, he searches Tour Guide. Tour Guide, a really strong card to be able to go into here. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get to the Orcust counter trap to stop that, because the Orcust counter trap can only be used while you control a Link monster, an Orcust Link monster, and can be used to negate a spell trap or monster effect, and then it banishes the card that it negates. So it's really, really strong. That has the fact to be able to banish it during the turn it wasn't sent to the grave, to be able to like add back one of your banished Orcust cards to your hand, or summon it to the field. But when you use that effect, you can only summon machine monsters, so it does have a little bit of a downside, but that's why using it during your opponent's turn with the field spell effect is really solid. So he goes ahead and summons Breaksword, not in the zone that Long Gearsu points to, but into the other far right zone that Bardiche points to. Bardiche activates, having no other choice but to target Mothman, and now going to use Breaksword's effect here to destroy Bardiche, since he does have a Fogblade to bring it back with, to clear Long Gearsu, since it's no longer being linked. Now, I believe a Libic was sent to the graveyard to be able to summon Seer from hand. Seer will not die because its effect is being negated by the effect of Libic, and now normal summoning could have technically special summoned the boots to be able to go into a Dante. Dante going to mill 3 into a Rank Up Magic Astral Force, Psychic Tracker, and another copy of boots. Seer attempting to activate to probably revive Cherubini. I'm going to go ahead and Called by the Grave that Seer, get it out of the game completely this game. So I'd rather not seer the target, or called by the target for Seer, I should say, instead of just hitting Seer instead. I believe to be the more powerful option. Again, BA still going forward with Cherubini. A lot of people think the deck might just be super relevant again, but like the fact that Call by the Grave is in the game with Seer and Graph only being at 1 does hurt the deck quite a bit, I would say. And I'm not playing the whole like Azathoth turbo build with my Burning Abyss because I just didn't want to do that. I just felt it's kind of really degenerate. I don't want to play it if I don't have to, and you definitely don't need to, in my opinion, because the rank 4 play does not come up a whole lot to be able to set up with Azathoth, in my opinion. And I'd rather go first and set up Fire Lakes and Fog Blades instead. That's just me. That's just me. My word isn't, you know, the truth. And that's not how all BA players should play. That's just how I personally opt to play it. The same thing with Mermail, like how I opt to not play extra link builds that still exist somehow, and just play it the way that I want to play it. So he does hit me with quite a bit of damage, dropping me down to 1400, which is pretty scary to be here against Burning Abyss because he does play Gallus still. And Gallus does burn life points away, which is, again, pretty scary to be this low life points with. And I top deck a Scrap Recycler with a Foolish Burial in hand, which is really good. So I basically have 2 Foolish Burials to work with at the moment. And I'm going to go ahead and send one off Scrap Recycler here, which I believe is going to be Harp Horror. Now, one thing he could have done here technically was to link away the Dante and the Breaksword to go into like just a generic link 2, but I'm still flushing out the extra deck for Burning Abyss. Obviously can't go into Cherubini, so I'm trying to think of like what other link 2 he could have gone into. Can't go into Wee Witch, could have gone in just like Underclock Taker or something, just so we could get like a Breaksword Engrave, so we could use that Fog Blade effect during my turn to summon out Breaksword to the zone that Bardiche points to get a potential interruption, because I think that would probably have just done me in anyways. But again, leaving this field the way it is right now isn't too big of a deal anyways. It's still a pretty decent field. So I link into Galatea. Galatea is effect activating now to just go ahead and finally grab me that field spell I need. And getting that all set up. Basically, the only orchestrated spells and traps I'm playing now in this OCG build, post-Dark Neostorm build, is 1 field spell, 2 orchestrated climax, 2 orchestrated return, and I'm not playing Einsatz either because I think Einsatz is a bit too slow. Even turn 3 essentially to be able to grab it with your Galatea. And I'm able to synchro into a Borreload Savage Dragon here, which is pretty nice. This deck can make Borreload Savage Dragon pretty easy now with the new Orcust Nightmare card being a level 7, and then we have Orcust Brass Bombard, which is a level 1 tuner, so you can see how those go hand in hand. And I'm going to summon out Borreload Savage, using its fact to equip it with Longirsu. It's going to gain 1250 attack, gaining 3 counters, so 3 potential negations in the future. And I believe my next move here is to swing over the Breaksword with the Savage Dragon. Hit him for 2250. I could have killed the Bardiche, but I was just mainly concerned here with doing damage. Although I think here ends up being one of the main deciders for how the rest of this game plays out, just simply by my choice of what to attack over with. Now, if I would have attacked over the Dante, he would have gotten an add back, still having Breaksword and Bardiche on field, which is pretty bad, I would say. But to keep in mind here, one thing that I forgot to take into account, I think we both forgot to take into account, is the fact that the Galatea cannot be destroyed by battle right now. And he uses the Dante, which I don't negate, because I believe negating the Dante would just be pretty bad since it's still milling for cost. And if I destroy it, he gets to add a card back anyways. And now he's trying to activate the Gallus, which is going to burn me anyways. And since the Savage Dragon doesn't destroy the card that he negates, actually, like, I could have negated the Gallus, but then he can just use it again, and I still take that 600 burn damage, and he's still able to attack over the Galatea for game, because what he also had engraved was a Fog Blade, which would allow him to make another rank 3, and that still does me in, because he's still able to possibly go into another Dante or another rank 3 and then just attack over the Galatea for game, because, like, again, it can't be destroyed by battle. And if I would have wasted the negation on the Dante, he has the Fog Blade effect to use, he has the Gallus effect to use, and it just has plenty of damage there just to be able to attack over the Galatea a couple times with each monster, just to do that extra 800 damage he needed to do. It would have been 300 over top with the the Bardiche, and then summoning another monster, another rank 3 to be able to attack over again, possibly another Dante to attack over again at 2500 to just be game, like I said. So now we're in game 3, starting off with another Lure of Darkness, banishing Grepher, Armageddon Knight sending Harp Horror, Mothman going off successfully again to send a Symbol Skeleton from my hand to the grave. Mothman is probably my favorite danger to play in this deck. Which is really, really nice to see, since it's one of the cheaper ones to begin with. At least I think it is at this moment. I think it's like a couple bucks a copy. It might have went up because of the YCS, but I'm not entirely sure of the price at the moment. But again, Mothman's really nice because they either discard another card in your hand, which is ideally an Orcust, or they discard Mothman, and you get to use this effect to discard another card in your hand and draw. So it's basically like a Dark World Dealings either way. So it's a very, very powerful card. Now using Galatea here to basically use this effect to set up with a field spell. Now, both of these decks are very strong going first, and they both sort of struggle to playing into one of the other boards going second, as you saw last game and as you saw game 1. So I feel like this is a very dice roll oriented matchup, and whoever wins the dice roll, whoever gets to go first and set up, is going to provide much more of a difficult task for the other player to overcome. Now, going into Dingirsu here, because I want to have that engraved to be set up for next turn, since I have the field spell. So now I have Longirsu, not only up too well, otherwise, unfortunately, I have Longirsu and the basically a Symbol Skeleton engraved with a Longirsu. I have a Nightmare in play as well, and 2 set back row with the field cell. So pretty much all my effects are live right now, but little did I know he was going to start his turn with double Called by the Grave. There's the first one. I could technically chain the Symbol Skeleton, but then he can just Called by the target that Symbol Skeleton had anyways. So I decided to not even chain the Symbol Skeleton, since he just decided to banish the targets here for Symbol Skeleton, which end up both being the Galatea and the Dingirsu, which to be honest, they're good hits. They definitely do hurt me a little bit. So the double Call by the Grave comes down, banishing the Dingirsu and the Galatea. Hurts pretty bad. But unfortunately, he did not open up too well other than that, which I guess is no bueno, I guess. So he's going to set one. He sets it right there, decides, that's probably not the best place to set it, because I could just send it to the graveyard with Longirsu's effect next turn, because I do have 2 banished machines now, since he did hit him with Called by. And I do have the field spell, so I could technically end phase use Longirsu if he would have left it in that zone that Longirsu was pointing to. But with nothing left to do, unfortunately for him, I'm going to pass it over to me, and now I basically have free reign. I believe I top decked a Dark Arm Dragon. No, I think I opened Dark Arm Dragon to start this game out. So normal summoning Harp Horror, going right into the Orchestrion. Now using Symbol Skeleton to revive Longirsu. So just like that, that's one of the reasons why I think this deck is so powerful, because Symbol Skeleton can revive some pretty beefy monsters like Longirsu and Orchestrion. It's just really, really solid. Using Harp Horror to summon Symbol, to get the 3 Darks engraved, to summon out the Father, the Dark Armed Dragon, using its effect banishing Mothman to destroy the cloak, or the boots that he had set, swinging in for with 3k, 25, 28, and 14, which I think ends up being game regardless. And I think I also had like maybe a climax set or something along the lines of that, or like a Called by. So yeah, ends up being a pretty sort of close game, I would say, as far as game 1 and 2 are concerned. I should say game 2 mainly. But both of these decks still fleshing things out as far as post-art Neostorm builds go. But Orcust, I think I have a pretty solid TCG build, which I'll be uploading soon in a deck profile. And if I do a deck profile for Burning Abyss, it's probably going to be post-art Neostorm, because I just don't enjoy playing BA currently with the card pool it has available. I just mainly want Cherubini. That's all I really want for BA to have a TCG legal is Cherubini. That's all I need. Hopefully it comes fast. And yeah, May 2nd, I believe, or May 5th is when Dark Neostorm comes out. So we've got a little ways to go, a couple months as is. And anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. How do you think these two matchups will fare in the future? How these two decks in general will fare in the future against whatever meta we may have to deal with. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. Like I said, it's always Winter Kill signing out. We're having a good one, and we'll see you guys in the next one.